What's up, guys? Coming to you, I want to talk to you about the top 10 greatest detectives in the DC universe.
Because
it's the Detective Comics universe.
They put the detective in Detective Comics. Also generated what started this conversation.
Well, you might remember we did our top 10 fastest DC characters. It ended up being like a top 15. And that was in response to DC being dumb and listing their top 10 fastest. And we're like, no, this is not the top 10 fastest heroes.
Or villains or
so
whatever.
We were like, we don't know what you're thinking over there, but you've left out half of the DC universe that's way faster than the Cheetah. And Wonder Woman. Who didn't even make the list.
I think she was an honorable mention.
I think she was an honorable mention. So, like, below number 15.
Right.
So, yeah. So, DC, in true fashion, decided to mention, well, it was Williamson.
Right. And we love his Flash. We think his
great.
Flash was good.
Although I haven't been reading it since they dropped Wally.
Well, I mean, why would you?
It has been good. It has been good.
Yeah. And he's introduced.
So he's a good writer.
Yeah.
It's just I don't care for the story going on.
And he makes some weird statements like the one I'm about to read to you. So what really started this conversation is I read, a couple years ago, right? They did the Button miniseries with Batman and Flash. Supposedly it was going to reveal some things about this Button that shows up in the Batcave, and it doesn't really do all that it promised.
It's a good bit of issues, though.
Yeah, no, I thought it was cool too. You lent me a couple, and I looked into some. But anyway, Williamson was talking about this upcoming issue crossover he's writing between Batman and Flash in reference to Heroes in Crisis. And this time he's taking the reins all to himself as opposed to before where he shared the writing duties with Tom King. Anyway, he was interviewed about that, and he at the end of the interview he's answering the question, are we going to go, how long are we looking into the past, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the interview, he says, hey, there are a lot of mysteries in the DC universe right now, and its two greatest detectives are on the case. And the implication of that statement is that Batman and the Flash, Barry Allen, are the DC universe's two greatest detectives.
So we're going to find out if that's really true.
Spoiler alert, it's not. Which is why we're making this video.
It's half true.
That's true.
It's half true.
Half true, yeah.
All right, so coming in at number 10, greatest detective in the
might be a surprise to some of y'all because you know how much I hate this guy, but
Damian Wayne.
Respect due,
So, yeah, I didn't want to put Damian on this list either, but I was like, you know what? This guy's the kid of Bruce Wayne, and he's being trained by Bruce Wayne himself. And Nightwing. And kind of half-brother of Tim.
Yeah.
And, this guy's around a lot of detectives. So, I mean, it makes sense for him to be a really good detective. And honestly, of all of them, he's one of the best at technology.
Yeah.
And so,
you know how kids are born these days, knowing how to use computers.
Right. And so, if you read anything lately with him, you're going to find some good detective work done by him. And I think, a lot of the character, maybe even more so these days than Batman. Sometimes he's a detective because a lot of times, Batman just kind of runs into stuff these days. But they've kind of lost the detectiveness of Batman in a lot of ways.
I know, and it's so sad because a well-crafted detective story is just a thing of beauty. You go back and you read Agatha Christie books or G.K. Chesterton's Father Brown series or Sherlock Holmes, that they're just well done in such a way that you're like, okay, I sat here and I saw everything that they saw, and yet for some reason I couldn't figure out who the killer was or who the bandit was or whatever. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Damian is so well trained at martial arts that he's kind of like Taskmaster in that he can see things and then pick it up, right? in his fighting style?
I don't think so.
You don't think he can watch and mimic moves and things?
I think he's similar to Batman. He's studied most of the things, but
because I just just from what little bit of exposure I've had to the character, it seems like he's a pretty quick study. So my argument is that by being around those other detectives, he's really picked up on like things that the average student might miss, in watching. So anyway, number 9, surprise here,
Nightwing.
Woo!
So the only reason Nightwing makes it this low, makes it on the list at all, well, he's the protege of Batman.
Right, he discovered who Donna Troy was.
He became Batman himself. And yeah, if you watch my favorite comic book ever video,
he'll link that.
Then you have seen an issue where all it is Dick Grayson doing detective work, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. So we don't really think of Nightwing as being a detective, but he has been very detective-y in his past, and so he learned from Batman. His mastery wasn't really detective; it was more acrobatics.
That's right, but he picked up
detective skills as well. So.
One of my favorite comics was the Flash plus Nightwing issue that came out in the mid-'90s. Mark Waid wrote it. Surprise!
Dick and Wally.
It's him and Wally, Dick and Wally. And the cool thing is, basically, Mark Waid retcons that relationship and establishes that every year they go on a vacation together, just the two of them, and it usually has some sort of detective theme because Wally refuses to ever pick. So in that issue, they go to something of a haunted house, and it's really interesting. Even if he's not quite the detective that Batman is, Nightwing loves himself some detective stuff. So.
Number 8.
James Gordon.
How could we not put Detective James Gordon on this list?
Because we put Police Commissioner James Gordon on the list. So some of y'all might be sitting there saying, but he never found out who Batman was. No, he never openly acknowledged who Batman was. There's a difference.
Yeah. Detective Gordon, for all his faults, always needing Batman to help. I think more for that. Batman is the great detective. Spoiler alert as to what's coming next. I think more it's that Batman's able to physically take on the bad guys more. And in some cases are needed a great master detective.
I think so part of the problem with making the argument for Gordon as a great detective is on the TV show they rely too heavily on him relying too heavily on Batman. Something of a trope there, because he's just like, oh, well, better call Batman.
This sounds like the Penguin. We need to call the Batman. I hate it, but he's the only one for the case.
or the Riddler in the first issue or episode or whatever. He's like, nobody can help us except for Batman.
Great Scott. How did we miss that? Anyways, I love Commissioner Gordon. He's
good. Excellent. I loved his character on the animated show. I thought
he was one of the best parts of the Gotham show.
Oh, right. Because wasn't it supposed to be centered on him?
Yeah.
And then they're like, let's do Batman.
And it kind of really more became about the Penguin, which was great. But anyways.
Number 7. The question.
Alright, so the only reason we marked him down this low
is because he gets distracted by conspiracy theories.
That's right. It's in his mind, everything is connected.
That's right.
Which, in some cases it is. We're not going to dismiss that. Some of the issues with him and stories with him are really great, and I love how they do that. But
yeah, no, like one of my favorite aspects of the Justice League Unlimited cartoon was the way that he was the only one to see how connected. Sorry, I'm getting a cold. How everything seemed to be connected to Cadmus, the Ultiman and the Doomsday clone, Galatea, the Supergirl clone.
no,
And yeah, I'm trying to remember what else. Luther's scheming and all that, and he saw through it, and he suffered for it. But in the end, Superman came through and saved him, and it led to this really awesome battle. And his relationship with Huntress was really cool.
Oh,
I love that episode. Double Date, I think, was the
great.
one.
Oh, that was good.
With him,
you had Ollie and
Dinah,
and then you had Question and
Huntress.
Huntress is great.
Yeah,
too good.
So
the only reason he's really that low is because sometimes the conspiracies really throw him off the case.
Right.
And you never really know, like, if he's on the right trail or not.
Right.
But he's a good detective. If it weren't for that,
I mean, they totally made that character a standout in the way they presented him on that show.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
all right.
Number 6.
Detective Chimp.
Oh, it's the Six Hulk.
It's
a red Six Hulk.
Red Six Hulk is here. Detective Chimp. So I love Detective Chimp. He's kind of a goofy character. He's a chip that runs around in a Sherlock Holmes outfit
with a magnifying glass.
Yeah, and is one of the smartest heroes in the DC.
And if he's not, fight me. I don't care.
Right.
His name is Detective Chimp. So,
like, if he's not one of the greatest detectives in the DC universe, then why
he should be?
Then why have him in the universe at all?
And he's funny, like in a way that Deadpool never could be, right? Because Deadpool is absurd.
Is this right?
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, yeah. So. Come at me on Facebook if you feel like you need to, but I think he's an interesting character that they're certainly exploring, and he has all these mystical ties, right? Because he was in the Shadow Pact, and then now he's in Justice League Dark. So
yeah, I love Justice League Dark. It's been great. So, all right, number 5.
Surprise!
The Riddler.
Yeah. So he had. I mean, let's be honest. If he applied his thinking ability to the detective game, why wouldn't he be one of the greatest? I mean, he's so stinking smart. And
he's not smart like Lex Luthor. It's more of a detective type smart.
Right, where he sees the small details and how they connect and that sort of thing. And they explored this a little bit a few years ago. Something happened. I think it was around the time of 1 year later, the storyline that he became a detective and he was on the straight and narrow and he was helping Batman and he deduced who Batman was as a result.
I felt like Riddler would. He just probably wouldn't care.
Right.
But because if he ousted who Batman was, then he wouldn't have his nemesis to beat him. Oh, me. So I feel like there is a good fundamental difference between the smarts that Lex Luthor has,
right,
which is just general intelligence and IQ and a rationality,
right,
where you're able to rationalize things very well. So that's my understanding of it. And the reason Lex Luthor doesn't show up on this list is because he's not really a detective. He's just very, very smart.
Right. Shrewd.
Some people think of him as a as like a detective, they'd probably put him on a detective list. But I think it's a different kind of intelligence that he has. It's not that he can't deduce things and rationalize things. It's
He's
just
too busy planning to observe the little things.
well, a lot of his intelligence is with technology and other things, and not really like detective work.
Right.
So
Number 4, one of my favorites. See how I stretch this 4 in these letters? It's Ralph Dibny, the elongated man.
We like Ralph Dibny. I never really saw him until the
show.
Well, I saw him first, in the Justice League show, but now he was in Flash, and I love it. It's great.
His nose detects mysteries. Wouldn't you like that power? I love it. They've established that his wife every year for his birthday tries to distract him with a mystery so that she can plan a surprise party that he's always aware of. Yeah, and
he's fun.
And so he's just a fun character in general. And then you throw in the detective stuff, and you're like, how can I love you anymore? You're just so awesome. And
I like because he's a kind of a family, wholesome character. Prove that you could have a family and be a superhero. For a while at least. But then some people might wonder why this next person is above him, and we'll explain that in a second.
Hold on, I've gotta write this out.
This next character seeks the help of Ralph on a case, and so some people have argued that
Ralph is
greater, but I think what it is sometimes you need some fresh eyes,
right?
And you can get distracted, and so it's helpful to have somebody else.
And Ralph's eyes are fresh.
So,
But number 3,
Martian Manhunter.
My favorite detective, Martian Manhunter.
So, some people forget of Martian Manhunter as a detective.
Dude was a police officer on Mars.
Well, I think the new series is going to be all about him being a detective again.
Yeah, I saw that.
Or at least a police officer.
Right. Saw the badge.
I was reading Justice League Year 1, and he's a detective in that.
Yeah.
I thought that was really some good stories with him. But so he hires out Ralph Dibny, and I think that it's more that not that he's incapable of solving it, but sometimes you just need another set of eyes, somebody who can see things from a different perspective. And so Martian Manhunter, I think, is one of the smartest people in the universe.
Right. And I love that when folks recognize that about him in the comics. He becomes Justice League leader, right?
He's
or the
like
focal character.
He's one of the heart and soul of the DC universe, too.
Yeah.
Just a great character.
So please don't crap on the character. Not you fans, but I mean you DC Comics. Don't crap on the character. I don't care if fans don't like him. He's one of my favorites. I mean, he's got the power set of Superman, plus extra powers, plus the detective skills of Batman, plus the telepathy and all that junk. So how can you not love the character? And if you say it's too hard to write him, you're not trying.
Yeah.
They showed that the character can be utilized well in the 80s, in the 90s, 2000s with Grant Morrison's run. And speaking of characters that DC has a hard time writing well, which is really strange because he's awesome.
Right. Number 2, Tim Drake.
Woo! No surprises there.
Who else would it be?
Arguably, he could have been number 1.
Yeah, so we had a discussion about, before this video, whether he would be number 1. And we think that he would be number 1, if not for the fact that he hasn't really grown up yet.
Right.
So we have seen an adult version of him. And I might argue that adult version, is probably, the greatest detective when he's in the present. And in the future, he will be the greatest detective, even with the number 1 character alive. But doesn't have to be that clean.
Sorry. I was letting you talk. He's your favorite character. So.
I loved it. I loved Tim Drake. So as Lewis said, he's tied for my favorite character with Dick, and so that he was kind of the lead role in Detective Comics during Rebirth, which made perfect sense. I don't know why they don't have him on there still. Instead, we've got a pseudo Outsiders, which they're about to boot the Outsiders.
Right.
So I don't know.
Why doesn't Tim Drake lead the Outsiders?
Who knows?
I mean, I guess
because they're not doing anything with Tim Drake these days.
Well, they're doing the Young Justice thing.
They will be, yeah. So I'm sure there'll be some detective work there.
Sure.
He'll be the only one that really holds holds the group together.
Right.
Anyway, so
he does a great job at that too.
Yeah.
He's a very worthwhile character to invest in. Go back and read his comics. From the '90s onward, they're high quality.
But I've always said that all the Robins are basically one aspect of the Batman to the extreme.
Right.
And so Tim Drake is the detective of Batman. And so
Dick is the
he
agility.
will surpass him in that.
Damien's the fighting ability.
Right.
Jason is the loner aspect.
Right.
So
yeah.
All right. Well, before we get to number one, which you may have already deduced if you're a detective worth your salt, or if you were just listening earlier, we'll do a couple honorable mentions. First, Slam Bradley. You're like, who is that? Well, he guest starred in a Batman comic that had Batman, Sherlock Holmes, and Elongated Man teaming up to solve a mystery. So he was a character that DC had in the 40s, 30s, and 40s. And he's occasionally shown back up in like Catwoman and stuff like that. So just a basic street-level detective guy who gets his, shine in the DC universe from time to time. So can't go wrong with that. Also, Henry Ducard. And you're like, wait, who's that? Well, I forget what the dude's name was. Liam Neeson's character in the first Batman Begins movie. No, that's the spoiler.
Who hasn't watched that movie? I don't know.
I don't know if you're watching this and you haven't seen that, go watch.
I think at a certain point you can spoil movies without
but anyway,
a spoiler.
I think he presents himself as this particular character. But anyway, this was the detective guy who taught Batman how to be a detective.
Yeah.
So, you should make the list, right? And then last honorable mention, and certainly not the least, Sherlock Holmes. He's been established as being a figure within the main DC universe before. And so there's no way he doesn't make the list. Except, we're recognizing that technically he'd be 100 years old.
And dead.
Well, he actually is in the story with Batman and he's alive. So I'm not sure how that works.
We'll say time travel.
Okay. But
unofficially time travel.
Ultimately, he would have to have lost a few steps due to age.
Yeah.
Why else team up with Batman and Elongated Man other than for a really cool story?
Yeah.
So ultimately, those are our honorable mentions.
That's the only reason he's not on our list.
The top 10 list, because he would be at number one.
Present.
Right.
Well, I think I'd put Batman over him.
I know, but Batman would put Sherlock
Holmes only in the DC universe.
You'd put Batman above Sherlock. In real life, though, Sherlock would be number one.
So if we were going in real life, what are the greatest fiction detectives? Sherlock Holmes.
Right, he's number one.
But if we're going in the DC universe, greatest.
Yeah, but I think Batman would still say Sherlock Holmes.
Well, Batman might, but he can be wrong.
Anyway, this is why Sherlock Holmes is honorable mention and not on our top 10 list. How about that? So, coming in at number one, surprise, surprise. Batman. Really, who wasn't expecting Batman at number one?
Bruce Wayne.
Bruce Wayne Batman?
Yeah.
Is there another
Batman? Bruce Wayne.
I'm kidding. It's a joke. Tim Drake in the future. I got it. It's a joke.
What's his name? The one I always forget to be on. Terry McGinnis.
Yeah, thank you. I was like, wait, what?
It'll come to me eventually.
Batman Beyond, that's his name.
His name's Batman Beyond. No, Bruce Wayne.
The original, except no appropriate substitutes, because this
Yeah,
is what
so
we're talking about.
he's the one that started the DC universe, basically.
Detective Comics 27.
Right.
I mean,
1939.
39. He'll be
Good year.
80 years old next year. And we're looking forward to Detective Comics number 1000.
We are excited about that. We are excited.
We are going to try and be together and buy that at the same time.
Who else would be the greatest detective but Batman? Of course, Tim Drake.
Right.
But he'll become Batman, you
right.
know. Bruce Wayne started it all. Although I think it's interesting, Tim Drake got his start in Detective Comics as well.
Yeah.
So,
I think they did that on purpose.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark Wolfman.
Is there a Robin that didn't get started in Detective?
No, I don't think so.
Because
pretty sure. I mean, Jason might not have, but you're right.
Well, I think Damian Wayne technically was in some Batman story. Like, there's an unnamed child of him and Bruce and Talia.
Right, but in the proper universe.
Universe.
Batman. I mean, Detective Comics. No, actually, I think that was Batman 666. So.
Oh.
All right. Well, whatever.
No wonder, we paid
He's so far down the list.
He's on 666.
Right, and his name's Damien. Like the child from, was it Omen? The movie Omen?
I don't know.
Anyway, Damien's like the name of the devil's child or something in a horror movie. I can't remember the name of it at the moment, but if you remember, tell us in the comments.
But those are our 10. We had 10.
Yeah, I think we made.
Sorry, we
changed
the number so many times.
Yeah, we started out just saying we'll do top 8 because people won't know who these characters are, and then I was like, oh, but wait, what about this? And
what about this guy? So that's our top 10.
Fight me, William. Fight me.
Let us know. Obviously, Barry Allen is not in there, mostly because he's a CSI. He's not a detective.
Now, that's not to discredit the shows that have detective aspects to it, but they work together as a team. It's less about the individual.
And we'd say that it worked really well with Batman and the Button.
Right.
And it's not that he can't do detective work. He is a police agent, police officer, and he does do CSI work, and so it's not, he can search clues and find conclusions, but he's more of a scientist than he is a detective, which is why Batman, I think, Bruce Wayne and Barry Allen work so well together.
Right, they're of a similar mindset.
So each one has different aspects to the same study.
Right.
And so, they can help each other.
Very analytical.
Bruce can take his, more sciencey problems to Barry, which he's not going to, but, Barry will show up and help him anyway. So, Barry will come and get help from Bruce. So.
Before we go, Tom King. Bullflop, man, that Catwoman junk you had in the issues leading up to the wedding where she and Bruce hang out with Lois and Clark. Man, what in the world?
It's like, where are we going?
Come on. Iris didn't know that Barry was the Flash. Lois didn't know Clark was Superman, but Catwoman looks and she's like, oh, it's clearly the same guy.
Clearly Clark Kent.
No. That would make her a greater detective than some of the other detectives on this list.
Might make her better than Batman.
No. Well, no, because Batman found out, right after.
Well, Batman would have searched. She just kind of looked and figured it out.
I know, and that's just the dumbest
She's
thing
almost
in
as
the world.
good as Tim Drake, who figured out Batman
and Nightwing. Right.
And Dick,
well, actually, he totally just picked up on Nightwing and then applied. He's like,
well, that makes sense of who Batman
is. If
is.
he's Nightwing, that means that's Dick Grayson, and I know Dick Grayson was adopted by Bruce Wayne, so there we go. Bruce Wayne is Batman.
I feel like Tom King has this weird love for Catwoman, which
write a Catwoman book, have her marry some guy.
I don't mind Catwoman. She's just not the greatest, villain of
I still think the best representation of that character is the animated series.
She's good.
Because she's much more tolerable in that.
And she's a villain.
And she's not at all pretending to be this awesome detective. Yeah. So DC, cut that mess out.
That's dumb. Anyways, so that's our list. Let us know what you think. leave us a like, give us a subscribe.
I thought he was going to cut me off, but he let me roll. So catch us next time.
If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe. We want to welcome you to the family. You're ready to end.
I don't know. I just
let us know if we forgot anybody. If you think we should have added somebody to the list, or where would you put them? So
I'm rolling on sinus medicine.
Let us know, and we will catch you next time. Peace.